Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Well, we are still with Jesus and His disciples in that grain field in the Gospel of Mark. And you know that the disciples have plucked some grain, maybe it's ears of corn, and they're eating, and some Pharisees observed them doing this. And so they're questioning Jesus, why aren't your disciples keeping the Sabbath? And so we're going to go ahead and go through the story one more time. It is Mark chapter 2, beginning at verse 23. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and His disciples walked along. They began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to Him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Now, the Sabbath keeping was super important for the Jewish people. Sabbath keeping was what marked them as being distinct, as being God's people. And the Sabbath commandment came at the Exodus on Mount Sinai. After the Exodus, they're receiving the Ten Commandments, and they are to keep the Sabbath, and they are to give Sabbath. They're to take rest, and they are to give rest. And it is to be a day to honor God. And Sabbath is rooted in creation. On the seventh day, God rested. God blessed that day and made it holy. And so for the Jewish people, this is the day that marks them as really belonging to God. It's not Sunday, it's actually Saturday, the seventh day, and it would start on Friday night and run through Saturday. And so Sabbath keeping in a secular, pagan, Gentile world was a way to show that you were truly God's people and that you identified yourself as being Jewish, as belonging to God and to all of the promises to Abraham and the patriarchs. And so it was really important to keep this day in terms of your identity and in terms of marking yourself as God's people, as a righteous people, as a holy people. The Jewish people struggled with this. We see, and one of the ways that we know this is because the rabbis taught that if they could just get all the Jewish people to keep Sabbath once, then God would see this and God would be persuaded, moved to send the Messiah. And so Sabbath keeping was kind of a thing that they struggled with, but the rabbis believed if we could just get everybody to do this, then maybe God would have mercy upon us. God would see how devoted we are, and God would send the Messiah to save us and to establish His kingdom. And so the Pharisees in particular placed a lot of weight on Sabbath keeping as the way to be holy, as the way to kind of earn God's favor. And so when they see Jesus' disciples breaking Sabbath, they're just kind of outraged and in shock, like, Jesus, how can you let your disciples do this? How can you let your disciples break Sabbath? They had a lot of regulations. We wouldn't normally think of plucking heads of grain as breaking Sabbath, as working on the Sabbath. But they had many, many regulations about what it meant to keep Sabbath, what you could do, what you couldn't do. And they saw Jesus' disciples as breaking Sabbath when they're plucking these heads of grain. It's interesting. Jesus doesn't try to argue with them about this. He doesn't say, well, that's not really work. All they did was pluck a head of grain, pull off an ear of corn, whatever it might have been. Jesus doesn't try to dispute whether or not they were working, whether or not they were breaking Sabbath. Instead, He challenges the Pharisees on different grounds. And so let's go a little bit further. Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions." And so here, as we talked the other day, we see Jesus making a comparison with David. And the point is that he identifies with David as the king, as the Messiah. And just as David was facing resistance from Saul, so Jesus is facing resistance from the Pharisees. That they are resistant to the truth of who he is, that he is the Messiah King, the Son of David. Jesus goes on. Then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. So the Jesus statement now gets to kind of the heart of Sabbath, that we weren't created to serve Sabbath. Sabbath isn't God. And so we're not created to serve this day. Rather, this day is actually created for us, a gift of God to us. And so they got it backwards. They have turned Sabbath keeping, they have turned the Sabbath into some type of God that they serve, that they have to somehow satisfy this regulation, rather than realizing that this day is a gift from God to them, to us. And then we think, okay, what is this gift about? Well, it's a gift so that we can rest, and it's a gift so that we can receive rest from God, give rest to one another, and learn to trust God for this day. That we don't have to work every single day, that we can actually rest and trust that God is the one who provides for us. And God gives us time to know God, to kind of stop from the busyness of life, from the routines of life, and to actually worship God and to celebrate being in His presence. And then Jesus goes on to say, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. And yes, Lord over the regulation, Lord in terms of the giver of Sabbath. And maybe that's the key thing we need to take away, that it's actually Jesus who gives us rest. That Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus is the one who gives rest, who provides rest. The key is recognizing who He is, and that rest comes from Him. And so that we don't serve Sabbath, we actually serve the one who gives Sabbath. We serve Jesus. So wherever you find yourself scattered today, man, we can get caught up serving a lot of things that really aren't worthy, of our lives. Jesus is the one who is worthy, and Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus is the one, the only one, who truly gives rest. And so my prayer for you today is that you would know the rest that Jesus gives. God bless. Have a great day.